a summary, a review, a spoiler review, ratings, what else we're consuming, plugs, next episode's book.
So, welcome to episode 14 of the Audiobook Club. Today, myself, Jason Sharkey, will be hosting, and I will be covering the book Blood Meridian, or was it the Evening Redness? I can't remember what the surname. The second bit is. Evening Redness in the West,
or the Evening Redness in the West.
Oh, I think I've read the wrong book. I thought we were doing Paint Your Wagon.
So yeah, that's what we'll be covering today. Probably a slight jump from the last book, as I sort of said. So brief sort of summary of the book. The story seems to follow a character called the Kid, whose name we never learn. And over the sort of course of the book, we follow the Kid and his sort of adventures through the West and down through Mexico and a gang, and shall we say some of his friends. So why did I pick this book? As I sort of mentioned last time round, I had read The Road by Cormac McCarthy, and I just felt like everybody was saying about how this was his big sort of magnum opus, and I really wanted to give it a go. So yeah, I'll read through the guesses here. So Stephen's guess was the main characters traveling in the West, lots of bandits and shooting. Imagine Django, someone like Dr. King Schultz. It's about a bounty hunter in the Old West.
Hey, that's not my million miles away. That.
Oh, that's not bad.
Johnny
Not a million ways to die in the
Johnny
West.
said it's about a lone wolf character wandering the West, doesn't know his place or where he belongs, finds something he cares about. And then Johnny sort of likened to the Hound in Game of Thrones, who initially was full of hatred, but then he sort of finds a community who then gets massacred, so then he's out for revenge. And then finally, Michael. So Michael sort of prefaced his guess by saying that he had also read The Road by Cormac McCarthy. So then Michael's guess was that it was set in the Old West. It's about a haggard, old, retired-ish sheriff who's hung up his gun, he's out of practice, and there's some outlaws come to his town to cause a ruckus. So it's sort of like a revenge story. Not a happy one, or a resolution that favours the protagonist, and is somewhat bittersweet at the end. So, who here wants to claim they were the closest?
So it's got to be me, right?
I think it was Stephen.
You reckon?
Probably Stephen. I don't know.
It's up to Jason, but your
I don't
choice.
think-
I
I don't think any of us were particularly.
you're all
close.
pretty terrible, to be honest. Yeah, all pretty.
I mean, yeah.
Honestly,
There was not a big one.
I was sort of leaning towards Michael purely because of how he sort of finished it with like not a happy one, or like not a good resolution that sort of favours the protagonist. Which was, if anything, is pretty spot on.
I think it's because as I said before my guess, I had read The Road, so I knew it was going to be a bit
I
nihilistic.
know, and that's almost why I didn't want to give it to you, because I think that was a pretty good guess, purely based on reading one of his previous books. But yeah, I suppose then we're going to have to go with Stephen in that case. Main characters traveling west.
If you want to pick Michael, whatever,
I think
I'll accept the judgment.
I think Michael even himself has argued himself out of it. He's only guessed that because he's read The Road. Like, he's not guessed it on the cover, he's just guessed it on his previous Cormac McCarthy book. So I'm going to give it to Stephen. Stephen was right. Main characters traveling west.
Of course, Michael.
Stephen wasn't
On the
right, he was
scores.
the least wrong.
That's the least wrong.
I mean,
Who was the least wrong?
and I'll take that as a win.
As you should.
So then I suppose
I've caught you, Michael, on the scores.
all caught up. Let me check the scores here.
I have no idea what the
So
scores are.
Stephen and Michael on 3, Johnny on 2. By the looks of it.
Jonathan. I think Jonathan was winning at one stage too.
I was 2 up. I've won the first 2.
Well,
I peaked.
haven't got the guess yet, so
Peaked too soon now.
Fair enough. Just knew I'd done like 2 books, haven't you? And like we knew what was
done 3 in a row.
so,
Knew 2 of them were, yeah. And then I picked this one.
so this one's your own one, so you couldn't do it. So well, maybe Michael's next one might be a good one for guessing. So
fingers crossed. So now we'll then jump into the review. Probably we'll just go straight to spoiler territory, to be honest. So I'll just give you like a bit of a sort of summary, the first couple of chapters, and we have a little chat about that. I said little summary is probably massive, but anyways, the story begins. Sort of telling us about the kid. His mum dies in childbirth. His dad's a drinker. Speaks lots of poetry. Once the kid reaches 14, he runs away to New Orleans. On his way there, he gets shot in the back and nursed back to health, and then he goes to Texas. While he's in Texas, he attends a sermon. While he's in this sermon, a certain character we meet for the first time called Judge Holden enters the sermon and makes false accusations against the Reverend, which leads to lots of violence. At this stage, the Reverend calls the judge the devil. Then the kid meets a character called Tovine, and together they initially have a bit of a fight, and then they attack a character called Sydney, and they burn down a hotel and flee. As they're fleeing, they sort of see the judge on the way out of the town, and the judge is sort of smiling at them. After that, the kid stays with quite a racist hermit. He then just sort of travels down to Mexico. He then attacks a Mexican bartender, I think, after the bartender refuses to serve him some alcohol. He meets a Sergeant Trammell, who wants him to come to Mexico to fight, along with Captain White, this gang. Kid and 2 friends sort of then tag along. So they cross the desert with Captain White. People are dying. About 10 days into this, they see a herd of cattle that are attacked by some Comanche Indians, or Native Americans, as we probably should say now. And then at this stage, the living and the dead are scalped by the Indians. The bodies are hacked up. They're pulling out the organs, pulling out the viscera, the genitals. Thankfully, the kid survives. He meets a character called Sproul, who's part of Captain White's party. As him and Sproul are sort of walking, Sproul's got quite an infected arm, I believe. On their way, they actually see a bush with lots of babies impaled onto this bush. They come through a destroyed village, and the stage, the Mexican bandits give him a bit of water. Sproul gets attacked by a vampire bat and eventually ends up dead, and the kid gets blamed for it. Then he's taken to Chihuahua City as a prisoner, where he once again meets Toadvine. So that's the first sort of 5 chapters or so summed up. So what were people's initial thoughts at this stage? What were people thinking at this stage of the book?
I guess I'll go first. So I thought the start was good. Unfortunately, from there it was downhill. But the start was definitely intriguing. Kind of introduced you to. I mean, you were straight on the first chapter. Was straight on the kind of, people getting accused of being paedophiles and stuff like that. So it's, kind of give you a good, strong kind of view of what the book's going to be. How it sets up the tone essentially for the book. It's how, what's the word? Kind of like raw and violent things are, and of course this even has the title Blood Meridian. Like the blood kind of like scenes in this are quite descriptive and quite gory, which I quite liked about the whole book. But definitely in the opening scenes here, it just gets straight off with that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think because obviously the main character introduced as the kid, you don't know his name, and only maybe a few bits about him, and then these other characters come on too. Again, you don't really know too much about them. It kind of keeps the mystery, and you're starting to get glimpses of how these characters are. Essentially everyone's kind of a bad character in this. Like there's not that many good characters. Yeah, I thought it was a good opening that had me intrigued.
Good, yeah, thanks, Johnny. Michael, Stephen, any thoughts?
So I thought it was a really good opening. The introduction of the kid as the protagonist, and his past with his kind of absent father. Yeah, I thought the introduction, it added a good air of mystery and kind of it gave a good sense of this kind of lost character that we're going to follow throughout the book. And then the sermon, which is one of my favorite scenes in the book, where the judge, interrupts this priest speaking to his congregation, and this is our introduction to the judge, and he's described as this hairless, no beard, no eyelashes, no eyebrows, white figure. He's later in the book, he's described as like an albino giant. It kind of makes him this kind of biblical, mythological kind of being that's just walking through this book. And it was a really effective way to introduce that character. I'm sure we'll talk about him more in the chapters to come.
Yeah.
And I think I've read a lot into this book. I've read other reviews. I've read a lot of people said that a lot of the ones that were negative reviews said that they abandoned the book at the baby hanging scene. It seems to be a very popular place to have like just put this book down and said this is not for me. And I think I've read as well that this is based on a real gang, isn't it? The Glanton gang.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
Yeah, they are based off a real gang. So yeah, I thought this was a really solid opening, and it had me intrigued, especially in the characters, the kid and the judge.
So I'm glad you just brought up the biblical aspect of that, Michael. Just because in the book it's filled with quite a lot of biblical references. I find it quite interesting in that sort of very first chapters when the Reverend actually calls Judge Holden the devil, because I think the sort of further on we go, you get to sort of start thinking, is he the devil? Like, what is going on here? But yeah, I did find there was quite a lot of biblical things going on. There's lots of like imagery of like people walking into the water, like being born anew. I think even at one stage, like between the sergeant and the captain, they sort of talk about like the captain bringing up the sergeant, like rising like Lazarus, so just chock full of religious imagery. So Stephen, had you any thoughts on this opening sort of section, or?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was okay. Some parts were good. Like I did like the whole part with the judge and the priest, and the judge calling him out for everything. And I thought, okay, this is the start where the bounty hunting's going to start happening, right? Where the judge has come to like arrest the priest guy for like all the crimes that he's calling him out on. But I realized later on that I sort of got confused about a few things, because for some reason I started thinking that the judge was the main character in this part of the book, and then he wasn't. And I was like, oh, that was kind of a weird insert, but it made sense later on that the judge reappears and whatever.
Yeah, it sort of pops in and out.
And then later down the line, I thought that the Reverend Green was the same priest that's later in Glanton's gang, and I was like, well, that's a bit weird, sort of thing. But then it turns out they're two completely different characters. So yeah, I got confused about a few different points, but I think the things that were going on was interesting and kind of showed the gruesome nature of the West, like the kid in Tonevine burning down that hotel and battering that guy. Although I thought I was wondering, like, what's this going to lead into, and nothing really came of it, other than the West is full of assholes.
Yeah, it's extremely violent.
Then it's super violent. Yeah, but after that, it's sort of the first few chapters anyway sort of slowed down a bit for me. Nothing really happened then after that, where he goes with that hermit, and then he's camping somewhere. He batters that bartender. Which was a bit weird. And then he kind of camps out, and all his stuff gets stolen, right? And then he meets your man. And then I thought at that point I kind of thought, okay, now it's gonna kick off. He's going to go with this guy. I can't remember. I don't know if he's even named, but he goes to join Captain White's gang. I thought, okay, now it's gonna come the bounty hunter part, and I was sort of anticipating that the whole way. But it never came, sort of. But I mean, the first few chapters, I think it was enjoyable. If a bit, disappointing at times. for a few different points. But yeah,
It's sort of like the Great Gatsby, and the way you were saying, where you expected the judge to be the main character. In a way, he kind of is. Even though we see everything through the kid's eyes, the judge is he's like it's kind of weird they call him the emotional core, because he's kind of devoid of emotion, but he's like he's like the thematic embodiment of the book. And it kind of reminds me of The Great Gatsby, where the narrator, the protagonist, is actually just the observer to this like thematic embodiment, the way Gatsby is in The Great Gatsby.
That's just giving me a good thought there, because like, okay, so this kind of goes on to like spoilers for later on, right? But the judge, like you say, like he's kind of the embodiment of the whole West, right? Where he can speak all these different languages, and it's never really explained why, and he can do all these mad things.
Yeah, but he's like a Renaissance man. Yeah,
he's like a summation of all the different types of people that you would see in the West, like, you know, different cultures and whatever, and they all have different skill sets and stuff, and he's like
he's just he's like a fountain of knowledge, sort of.
He's like the gestalt of all the people who would be in the West. There's a good word for you, gestalt.
That's a good word. Go have to Google that one there.
Mm-hmm. See if it's real.
No, I believe him. I quite like this opening. Definitely. I did. I'm not a lie. I did find it sort of actually difficult to sort of keep up at times. Don't know if that was just me, but I don't know if it was necessarily pacing or just sort of the how it was told. But at the times I was sort of
Cormac McCarthy style.
Yeah, at times I was like sort of right. What exactly? Maybe I wasn't just listening as closely as I should have been. But at the times I was just a bit like, okay, now we're here. That's mad. But I did overall. I quite enjoyed it. So if anyone else sorry, go ahead.
I do think it's one that you properly have to like tune into. You have to really be listening, because you will miss tiny details that are actually really important, I thought. And I think that's part of the problem that I had in the first few chapters, is that I wasn't paying enough attention to things. And got confused about those things I was saying.
Yeah, and I
like the judge and the priest and everything.
I don't know if I should bring this up now, because I was going to wait for a little while later to bring it up, but like Cormac McCarthy's style of like prose in this entire book is really unusual. There's a lot of like run-on sentences. It's like the man walked in and he sat down and he picked up his drink and he drank it, and it's like
I had a problem with that,
and it's kind of it's a bit exhausting.
And he was wearing a hat.
It's a bit exhausting to listen to. Yeah, and it's
But it's also what I was like famed for.
And there was a dog in the corner.
It is. Yeah, some people love it. It is very poetic, but at times I was thinking, this is a passage where I should be sitting and dissecting this, but listening to it, just having it breeze over me while I'm like doing chores or something, it's not really working. It's not evoking anything, because this is poetry basically. It's something that I need to sit down and dissect and try and understand each individual thing of what he's saying. I think like audiobooks really benefit from simple, punchy writing and this heavy literary style. It kind of washes over you a bit, and you kind of lose yourself in it. So I don't think it was just you, Jason, that was finding it hard to follow.
Yeah,
I think it sort of didn't suit the medium at times, is what I thought.
Yeah, and I think you're right too about like, it's definitely a book that I think will be good to analyze, because there's going to be different loads of different themes and stuff like that to sink into. It's obviously littered by best like with what people are saying. So, but yeah, like you said, I don't think it translates to audio form super well.
No. Well, I still enjoyed it, but yeah, I suppose we'll get into that maybe at the end. We can have a big discussion about the good and bad.
Wasn't enough wagon paint.
There's no wagon paint, in fact. None at all. And Michael, just while it's come to me, I'm maybe jumping ahead of myself a bit here, but in terms of the food from the book, what did you treat yourself to this time round?
I completely forgot I was supposed to do that.
Do you know,
I can't even remember.
I'll scalp anybody or make yourself a wee necklace of ears, nothing like that.
No, I had the urge to scalp a few people, but resisted.
Right, well, it's probably spoiled a bit there, but anyways. Grand. So we'll jump into the next sort of couple chapters anyway. So things sort of pick up. So the kid and his new sort of pal Toadvine meet a guy with a very interesting name called Granny Rat Chambers. And then at that stage they're just sort of chatting about an Indian massacre. And then they sort of bump into Glanton's gang. So I think at this stage they're all in jail, potentially. And maybe get out. So then Judge Holden's also part of this gang. And the governor of Chihuahua City, Angel Trias, offers to pay him $100 per scalp to hunt Apaches. So between the three new characters, they all join Glanton's gang. There's a few characters to sort of point out in this gang. You know, there's two Jacksons. One's black, one's white. They also just meet, like an arms dealer. They meet a Mexican sergeant. And Toadvine meets a character called Bathcat, who I've just sort of spoiled a bit about, but he's famous for his sort of necklace of ears. Then at this stage, there's a few magicians, they call them, and they play some tarts, which sort of freaks a few people out. And also at this stage, then we sort of meet a character that we were all a bit confused about, I think, which is an ex-priest called Tobin.
Were you guys confused about him as well?
I did get a wee bit confused. Definitely.
That's good.
So then the judge, sort of, Granny Rat actually ends up going missing. The judge is asking Toadvine what's happened to him. And then Black and White Jackson have a bit of a scuffle, shall we say. White Jackson points a gun at Black Jackson. Later on, Black Jackson comes around with his knife and decapitates White Jackson in front of everyone. Then they get attacked by Apache Indians. They end up meeting some squatters and a young Mexican boy. The judge, who does this a lot through the book, decides to sort of preach naked almost. Well, he is naked. It's preaching. It's probably the bit he does almost. Then after that, it's mentioned that the young Mexican boy has been found dead with his neck snapped. Tobin then tells the kid the story about how the judge joined the gang. He saved them all from an Indian attack through sort of his warfare tactics. Tobin sort of just also gives the kid like a warning, sort of don't ask any questions about the judge. So that was sort of chapters 6 through 10. Anybody want to jump in about any thoughts about that? It was sort of...
So what Michael said there about the last part about Cormac McCarthy's writing style and things and how it was easy to get lost, I think that's kind of what happened to me, essentially from here on. And I think because at the start of the book, you're starting a new book and you're all interested, so it's easy to follow. But then I think when you're like doing other things, like I think I listened to a lot of this book while I was driving, and usually I would, it's one of them things where you're driving and you zone out and you're listening, and then you're like, geez, how the hell did I get to this location? Did I run any red lights or anything, like, because you actually, even though you're on autopilot, you don't realise that you actually are still able to drive, and you just do it all naturally. But I was the actual opposite with this. I was actually focusing on the driving and not this book. I think the writing style might have been a part of it, but I think too a lot of it is the book's a bit repetitive for me. Like, it's essentially just like, here's a bunch of boys, they do some bad stuff, they go scalp a few people, there's a bear comes in and attacks them, a few Indians come and attack them.
Spoilers.
And then repeat, it's just a constant loop of that, throughout the book. So I think that's kind of another reason why I kind of zoned out a lot. Because, whenever I started paying attention, it would just be like some person getting scalped, I'm like, oh, this again. So I think after the first few chapters, I think the book started going downhill for me, and I didn't follow it as well.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Michael, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so it's kind of has me thinking about what movies and books are supposed to do as a whole, because you can't really. I don't think anybody can come out of this and say I enjoyed that. But I don't think that's also the purpose of books and movies. I think that there is a certain type of books and movies where the primary thing that you want to experience is enjoyment. But there's also movies and books where the primary experience is that it is emotionally impactful in some way. So, and I think that is definitely more a literary thing than it is a genre fiction thing, where the emphasis is on how it emotionally impacts you. And I definitely am a fan of being impacted by misery. I love Ari Aster movies. I love Darren Aronofsky movies. I can definitely handle a lot of misery. And this, I was what does Cormac McCarthy, what does he want me to feel here? And it was just this relentless barrage of violence and misery and horrible imagery. And I think, and what I think is the intention of all this is to exhaust you. And that sounds like a very negative experience, but at the same time, I think that is the intention of these chapters, and the repetition is intentional. It's just, this book is trying to grind you down and destroy your sense of humanity. I think that is part of the experience of this book, and I think that's why a lot of people love it. I think it's like, this is the ride that you're on, that you are just being worn down and seeing the worst parts of humanity over and over again. So that's kind of what my feeling was at this stage. I was trying to figure out what am I supposed to be feeling here? What is this book trying to say?
Yeah, I would agree. It's a very ugly story, but I think it's just about an ugly time in like American history, and it's just trying to get that point across. Really, that unfortunately the Wild Wild West wasn't just as full of shining knights as the movies make it out to be. You know, it actually was just full of a lot of murder and rape and torture and violence in general.
Yeah, because this was written in 85, which I don't know if that was the height of the romanticizing of westerns, but it was definitely
would have been towards the
end of that era.
Yeah.
I guess maybe that's what he was trying to do, is unromance it. Yeah, to make it. To like expose it for how gruesome it was. Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of like what a Game of Thrones does to fantasy. It's kind of it's showing you that the ugly, gritty kind of aspects of this material.
Yeah, Stephen, have you any thoughts about those couple of chapters?
Yeah, I think for the most part I would echo a lot of what Johnny said. Right, it's just a lot of gruesome events that happen, and it feels like it repeats a lot. You know, the stuff they're scalping, then they're traveling a bit, then they're being rude to each other, then they're scalping some more, and so on. But to add to that, I think there was a few things that I felt like were like missed, like inserts that were sort of missed opportunities, or like didn't seem like they fit. Like the stuff with the magicians, right? I didn't know why they were included, other than to spark a fight between the two Jacksons. So was there something to do with that? I can't remember, but
I think and later on, I think they sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Like they sort of let Glunton sort of know what his future may entail. Like they sort of read his future a bit, and it's sort of like a bit of foreshadowing. That's the word I'm looking for, I think.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah, it's foreshadowing of like I think they do the kids as well, or the kid doesn't want them to do it or something. But
yeah,
it seemed like it was like half cocked in the sense that it sort of, like you said, did the foreshadowing bit, but it was kind of strange the way they done it. I mean, the foreshadowing kind of is there by itself because of the nature of what they're doing, right? They're going to like scalp, Native Americans and stuff, right? So
yeah, and I don't know. Sorry,
and then the folk that were in the mine shaft or whatever, I kind of tuned out a bit to what was going on there, but it seemed like that was wasted as well. I don't know.
I think it's like what you're talking about is another thing that he's doing here, is kind of there is no conventional structure to this book at all, and things just happen and there's no consequence to them, and that can be like unsatisfying. But I think that is like a theme of this book. I think it's a theme of Cormac McCarthy's entire career, just basing that off, The Road. And I've never read No Country for Old Men, but I've seen the movie, and like one subject matter that he's very fascinated by is nihilism, and there is no point to some of this, and sometimes just terrible things happen. And that can seem like a cop-out, to say, oh, well, somebody asks, what's the point of that? And then you say, well, there is no point. It can seem like an excuse, but I think like, especially if you look at like the judge's, his monologues and stuff, like there is very intentional nihilism in this book.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing, like you're saying, right? I mean, but for me, I was expecting something. Maybe this is a fault of mine, but I was expecting something that just never came. I was expecting like a plot that didn't really materialize.
Yeah, because there's not really a plot.
Yeah,
or there's a very loose plot.
And again, that's okay, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to sort of go back, Stephen, sort of something you mentioned about like the foreshadowing, where I can't remember exactly what you said now. But again, I think it just comes down to like the sort of pacing and the prose. I think it's just like it's just said in one sentence. It doesn't linger on. It just happens. Yeah. And if you missed it, you missed it. Which I think is sort of a fault of the audiobook, unfortunately, because you will miss it. You will miss things, But like it's one line, and it's gone.
Yeah. No grand importance is given to anything really. It's
and only.
Hey, one thing I wanted to mention as well is that $100 a scalp is a lot of cash in them days.
Yeah, it's crazy, like. But like it just shows you like something that's never talked about, I suppose, or at least not in the westerns I've ever watched, is like how hated these Native Americans were. It was like they were paying fortunes just to kill them and get proof of their heads, essentially.
I wonder if there's some sort of thing you could look up to see what that would be nowadays. I'm actually going to have a wee look here.
It was the 1800s, wasn't it?
And it's the fact they descend upon innocents that aren't even involved in any kind of conflict, just to collect their scalps. It's so evil.
Yeah, and I think that's something that sort of happens in the next couple of chapters coming up as well, is when it just sort of becomes just about general chaos and evil.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no way this could be right. There's no way this could be right. So I'm on a website called nationalarchives.gov.uk, and it's got a currency converter which goes back to 1270 until 2017, right? So I put in the currency for 1840, which I think is roughly the time period, right?
Yeah,
put £100 in, okay?
£100 or $100?
There's no dollars, so that's another reason why I'm skeptical about this. But according to this, $100 would be worth about $6,000.
$6,000 per scalp.
$6,000 a scalp, and with that you could buy 6 horses, 18 cows, 151 stones of wool, 49 quarters of wheat,
really,
and that's
really sweet.
500 days worth of wages for skilled tradesmen. There you go.
There you go. So I've just googled it there. I typed in 1850, but not quite changes. But it's Google's telling me $100 is worth almost $4,000 today. So
that's mad.
Yeah, but I mean, if someone offered you $4,000 to scalp someone now, like it's pennies, it's nothing. You wouldn't do it.
Well, it depends who it is. Like if it was, I don't know, Hitler or something.
Ah, well, they're not.
But what if you're walking down the street and there's just a wee scalp just lying there? Like, I mean,
but what if all your mates were doing it too? Like all the lads were scalping too.
Scalping peer pressure. It's a disease that's plaguing this country. $4,000. That's madness.
Isn't it? So yeah, I suppose my thoughts. I feel like the kid's not actually in this sort of section just as much as he was at the beginning. I feel like he sort of is at the side of things. I feel like it focuses a bit more on just generally like the gang and the judge to a degree. One thing I just wanted to sort of bring up and just draw to people's attention, because it becomes quite clear throughout the book, was, you know, that sort of section about the sort of young Mexican boy being found dead once they got to this sort of village. It seems to be a sort of a theme that runs in the book. About these sort of young children.
Death of innocence.
Sort of showing up dead as soon as they arrive to a village, and you're sort of thinking, right, well, which one of them is the fucking kitty snatcher?
And the judge is usually naked within a couple of, you know, he's usually found naked at some stage in the chapter.
Yeah. So just, I suppose, I mean, I'll draw attention to it, but that was something that I picked up a lot. There's actually quite a lot of that happens again. I suppose you're right, it is maybe a bit repetitive, but
it's on the subtext at the start, but I think it becomes clear throughout the story that the judge is a big fat pedo. So.
Yeah, and like definitely by like the sort of last couple of chapters, like it's confirmed, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, will we jump on to the next sort of bit?
Terrifying.
I think another thing about that is, well, you know, the kids and stuff. I think that's supposed to be like a comparison with the kids' journey through the story, right? Where like death of innocence sort of thing is going on, right? More and more he gets embroiled in the whole West stuff that he kind of loses his innocence more and more.
Yeah,
but I suppose
he's raked by the West.
Yeah,
one thing you could potentially
it's
argue
pretty grim,
is that,
Michael, but yeah,
is that like his mother dies during childbirth. You know, he was born into violence. You know, do they ever have any innocence? You know,
yeah,
like that's the sort of story. As it begins with the death of his mum. You know, maybe not necessarily his fault, but it was during childbirth. You know. It all begins. I think that's a really strong point of the book too. That I think his perspective is well conveyed in what isn't said. It's how dispassionately everything is described, and because we know it's through his eyes, it's kind of telling of his own character, that he's just letting all these horrific events kind of wash over him. It's just like, this is the way the world works. He kind of accepts it. There's no real introspection within this book. It's very rare that you get any inner monologue from the kid. It's just him describing events over and over again. And I think that is, and again, an intentional way of revealing character. The fact that there is no introspection to this. Yeah, I don't know if there's much at all. It's not from memory, anyways.
No, it's very description and event driven. There's very, very little inner monologue at all.
Yeah, there's no reaction to it anyways, really.
Yeah.
So the next couple of chapters then, something Johnny had sort of touched on. So the chapter begins with a bear coming out and killing one of the Delaware Indians that was actually part of the gang. But then they end up fighting it off, maybe think potentially killing it. And then the judge just goes on one of his sort of big sort of speeches, sort of goes on chatting about like images and sort of drawing something to like understand it. And you'll sort of notice at times the judge will sort of draw something like a hieroglyphic or like a bone, or and then actually destroy it. They sort of try and keep that knowledge to himself. He then sort of tells a story, I can't remember exactly, about like a harness maker and a traveller, and how the harness maker meets this traveller and then actually goes off and kills the traveller, but then frames it as like they were sort of robbed. It's only then on his like deathbed that the harness maker actually tells his own son that he was the murderer all along, and that's the whole point of that is like the whole like image that son thought he had of his father has just been sort of stolen from, and he didn't actually have the full knowledge that he thought he had of the dad. Then it's around that chapter you see fires off in the distance, and they're sort of thinking, okay, there's some more Native Americans up there. Forward on to the next chapter, the gang's killing Indians, they're killing children, they're killing Mexican slaves, they're just killing anything they can scalp at this stage. One of their own in the gang actually gets killed. It's a guy called McGill, and without hesitation, Glinton just walks up, kills him, and scalps him. Then at this stage, the judge also takes an infant, I think, from the village, and I found this quite disturbing. Like 1 minute the judge is sort of sitting with the infant on his lap playing, and then it's just like 1 minute later the infants had their necks snapped and the judge has scalped it. Then they start getting chased by these Apache Indians and they flee back to Chihuahua City. So then they start having dinner with a gentleman called Trias. I think he might be a general or he might be the governor. I can't remember exactly. And they're having dinner, they're dancing. After that, they're kicked out of these towns. There's lots of havoc. Then start just killing some peaceful Indians, which Tovine sort of objects to. They end up having to leave Chihuahua with a bounty on Glanton's head. And then there's another scene with the judge dancing this time around in a different village. Then another little girl goes missing. Judge buys some of these dogs off a fellow in the town for like extortionate money, like crazy amounts of money. It's like 150 per dog or something, which, as we said, it's like a lot. But then for whatever reason, he just throws him off a bridge. Glanton takes him well and the judge ties him to the bed, but he breaks free and sort of starts causing chaos in town. Some of the gang members get killed, and Glanton just seems to be sort of going crazy because now they're not like being paid to sort of hunt for these scalps or anything at this minute. And then after all that, they end up going to a town or a city called Sonora. So that was sort of chapters 11 through 14. So again, to say quite a lot of just storytelling, world building, lots of sort of Indians and then fighting.
Yeah, so I've been like thinking about this book a lot since it finished, and kind of just because I think it's the most literary book that we have done on the podcast. So I think there is a lot of stuff going on and a lot of stuff to dissect into it. The thing that I find really interesting and really provocative about the judge's character is his creation of art and then his immediate destruction of it. And what my interpretation of that is, as bespeaks his wider character, is I think that he sees the way that an artist creates something and they see beauty and the expression of this, he sees just an equal amount, if not even more amount of beauty and the destruction of creativity. And I think that is why he throws the dog off the bridge, and I think that's why he finds war and destruction so attractive, because it's his form of art, it's his ultimate form of expression. And that's what I feel is my insight to the character, and that's what I think the intention of the destruction of the art is to the character. And as for, you said that you found that scene very disturbing. I found it actually, it was more disturbing, I thought, the moment where the infant was with him than the actual what happens, because you just know that something terrible is going to happen. It's the ominous and it's the dread of what's going to happen. Kind of that got me more than than the actual event.
And the dread, I don't even think gets to last that long, because from memory, like, it happens so quickly. Again, I think it is maybe like a matter of sentences or like a paragraph or two. It's like, and they all turned over and the neck had been snapped and they were scalping it,
Yeah, again, it's like that thing where he doesn't give like massive importance to anything in this book, really. It's just everything is so incidental. And I think that's kind of the point of this book again, that there is no point, that it's just these terrible things happened in this point in time, and he's just exploring that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it actually picked up a bit during this bit for me. There was a lot of interesting scenes that happened. Just one point that came to my head there while you were talking about the dogs. It's not just, they weren't just dogs, they were puppies as well, right? So I think, again, that's another point towards the the innocence thing, where they just killed the puppies straight out. And then the thing with the governors, or the glutton being sick, I think that's like a metaphor for like the sickness that would run through these sort of gangs throughout the West. Not like physical sickness, but like sickness in the sense that they just go rove around and cause destruction and mayhem for no apparent reason. I think that was like a metaphor for that sort of thing, because when he eventually gets free, he just goes on a rampage, right? And
he just goes mad.
Yeah, I think you're definitely like getting to something too with the innocence thing. I think it's like innocence probably offends the judge.
Yeah.
Like that's nearly why he commits the rape. It's not even an act of pleasure for him. It's more the robbery of the innocence that he despises.
Yeah, it's not even just the judge though. I think Bathcat shoots at the dogs as well, like as they're floating down the river or whatever.
But is that more like a mercy killing sort of thing at that stage, or
I don't know. I can't really remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It could be, but yeah, I think the judge just likes to assert his like dominion over these things that he deems lesser.
Yeah.
You know, he just seems to just anything he deems below him, which is everything, or anything that he deems like just to go back to the sort of drawing images of like the art on the walls or whatnot. Like as soon as he's done with it, doesn't need it. It's not for anyone else. You know, like the children, like as I say, the hieroglyphics, or it's good enough for him.
Yeah,
He's got what he's wanted, and then it's gone.
Yeah, another thing that started like showing through to me in these couple of chapters is that the judge has some sort of superiority complex, or like god complex, or something like that. Just in everything that he does. I think even at one stage he says something about how like he knows as much as possible that he can know, because anything that he doesn't know exists without his consent or something like that. And it's like, right, so he thinks he's God then, and he's kind of presented that way as well, in the way he's able to like resolve situations and stuff. Like he talks people down and whatever somehow. And yeah,
I was going to bring that up on the top Goodreads comment. That is the top quote on the book. It's whatever in creation exists without my knowledge exists without my consent.
Yeah, I must have saw one of them reviews or something, because I don't know how I remembered that otherwise. But I like, you know, it yeah. I think he's got some god complex type thing going on. And I feel like Cormac McCarthy's trying to present them in that sort of way for some reason as well, and I'm not quite sure why.
I mean, has he got god complex, or is he, in fact,
is he God?
Omnipotent? Is he? You know,
could be.
That is. Jason touched on one of the popular theories of this, that he is the devil. There is other theories that say that he is the wrath of God.
Yeah, I mean, the very first chapter he gets called the devil by the Reverend.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's called the judge, right? So he's there to judge, impose his will, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
I feel
very interesting.
These last sort of couple sections, I feel like it just becomes more and more apparent of his like sort of almost like supernatural being. I suppose one thing actually I do want to just bring up before you go was that they really place an emphasis on the dancing, and it seems to be whenever, especially in those sort of chapters 13 and 14, like there's a bit of dancing, there's a bit of carry on, and then once that happens, be it because they're all just sloshed and on the drink, but there's lots of violence, debauchery that happens sort of after this dancing. Or I think even they sort of skip to the last chapter. The judge sort of likens the dance to like war itself. I think
war. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he likens the dance to war.
Yeah.
So again, just another sort of side note was that there's another child gone missing once they got to this new town. But if no one else has anything to add, I'll jump on now to chapters.
Just one wee small thing.
Go ahead.
So they're all dancing, and now we're thinking that the judge might be like the devil. They're all dancing with the devil.
Oh.
Spooky.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Which is like a term for dodgy behavior, or like immoral things.
Yeah.
Yeah, which you're spot on. That's what they
Fascinating.
are doing,
You know, enjoying this book more as we go on. Through this.
Once you get into the analysis of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely. I have the paper copy. I think I might sit down and actually read it at some stage. But I'll get into that then. So I'll jump on here now to sort of chapters 15 through 19, the sort of second last section of the book. Quite a lot sort of seems to happen here, but more the same. So the governor of Sonora sends them off to get more scalps. On their way back, they run into General Elias, who fights them with an army of 500, apparently. I think then a character called Shelby gets wounded, and there were 4 characters all wounded, and they sort of drew like arrowheads to see who would sort of put them out of their misery. And one of these things, the kid pulls out one of these arrowheads. He was going to pick a different one, but he actually looked at the judge and sort of changed his mind last minute, and then ended up picking out one of these arrowheads that meant he was supposed to put someone down. So he was supposed to put down a character called Shelby, but he actually ended up leaving him. The kid then returns to the gang after a bit of traveling, and he becomes more and more afraid of the judge. And just to sort of pop out like one of the sort of religious imageries that pops up here again was sort of at one stage the kid sort of sees like a silent burning tree, like, you know, they sort of compare that to like the burning bush from God that sort of talks to him. You know, he's passing this burning tree, but it's not speaking out to him. So then on to the next chapter, they sort of head on out, and there's a few of the gang members are getting hanged. They actually start working with some Apache Indians, and they agree to sort of help them get whiskey. So they end up entering this town that's actually ran by the Apaches, and at this stage they meet, I can't remember the character's name, they meet this guy and his his brother, who they just termed the idiot. Then they cause more murders, and at this stage the judge actually talks away out of it, which you sort of mentioned. And there's another little girl that goes missing. And there's also some talk about a guy trying to sell these mutant dogs to the gang. I think one has like 4 eyes and one has 2 legs or something crazy like that. They end up then giving this whiskey that they sort of water down to the Apaches, and they're sort of hoping the Apaches will get themselves drunk enough not to notice. They're sort of sitting around the campfire, and the judge is doing these sort of mad coin tricks, things that just can't seem to be explained with a human eye. You know, I think he like flicks one up and it like goes up in the air for a while, and then it comes back down to his hand, and they sort of think, oh, it's just like he's got horsehair or something tied around it. But then he sort of seems to flick one, I think, around the fire and back to him, and everybody's like, right, well, what happened to that? And then he gives another sort of speech about war and God's will. And then they sort of, I think this is a sort of big moment, they arrive at this sort of ferry crossing, and they meet these Yuma Indians. Sort of like sort of side chapter in between the sort of bigger events is that these women then bump into the gang, and they see the idiot all caged up, and they say they free the idiot, and they sort of take him into the water, and they bathe him, and they give him his name instead of calling the idiot, they call him by his real name. And then later on that night, the idiot actually goes back into the water. I think it's just his fascination with things. I think there's an earlier stage where he's like staring into the fire. He's just like obsessed with these elements. But the judge, weirdly enough, actually saves the idiot from drowning. They head back up to the ferry crossing after meeting with these Yuma Indians, and they met these Yuma Indians, and the plan was actually that the Yuma Indians and the Glanton gang would attack the ferry crossing and sort of take it from themselves. But Glanton talks to the guy who runs the ferry crossing and actually says, look, these Yuma Indians are going to come up and attack your thing. So the guy's like, yeah, come here, you can defend it. So then they end up actually killing the Indians who come to attack the ferry, even though that was the Glanton gang's plan, or they were the ones that sort of pushing towards it. So then the Glanton gang ends up in charge of this ferry crossing. They end up sort of just charging extortionate amounts. I think it used to be like $1 to cross. They were charging there about $4 all of a sudden, and they were actually starting to rob everybody. Then a character who I didn't talk about earlier, I believe he's called Brown. He betrays the gang and sort of runs off with their money. Because the thing is, they're like at this ferry crossing, they have to stay there, so they have to sort of send people in and out to do their jobs for them. Glutton actually then goes to San Diego to sort of look for Brown and I think Tovine potentially. Once again, it's sort of drawn to like the idiot then starts to dance. And then what happens after the idiot dances out, I believe they get attacked by some Indians. I can't remember what sort of tribe it is, but then, you know, like your Black Jackson's dead, I think a doctor is dead, and actually Glutton gets killed here as well. But the judges escapes. So quite a lot happened in those sort of 5 chapters. Apart from like one wee sort of side mission with the idiot getting freed. You know.
I think some of this part of the book I listened to in the car with Jonathan. Yeah, it's a relentless amount of violence. It was I did have trouble keeping up at points in these chapters. As I said before, Cormac McCarthy's prose in this book is not the easiest to follow, but I got kind of a overview of the events as they were happening. I know a lot of people say this is the darkest book ever and everything, but I think because, like, you know, I found the road so emotionally affecting because I had because of the relationship between the man and the child. I thought that put against this all these horrific things that were happening kind of give it that emotional core. So sometimes I had difficulty connecting with any of the horrible things that were happening, even as horrible as they were described. They didn't quite affect me as much as the horrific things in the book like The Road did.
Yeah, and I think just to sort of mirror that, I think The Road has a lot more emotion behind it due to the father-son relationship.
Yeah.
Whereas there's just no emotion in this book. It's just massacre after massacre and just get on with
Yeah.
it. No one mourns anybody, you know.
Yeah.
Like friends are killing friends once they're not like of any use to them anymore. It's just right, get on with it. You're injured, you're dead. Next bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stephen, have you any points?
Yeah, this is where I really started to tune out, unfortunately. And I just want to make it clear that I really tried to like follow along what was happening in this part of the book, like for the whole book, but I just couldn't. Like it just got to the point where I was like, okay, so I realized how far into the book I was, right? And I was like, okay, so this is just going to be more gruesome events happening over and over and over, and that's the whole thing. And there were so many of them that I was, like Michael said earlier on, I was so worn down by it that I was like, oh man, I just can't tune in properly. And when you were kind of going over the overview there, or the summary of this part, I was like, I do not remember any of that happening.
Fair.
Which I'm sorry to say, but yeah, I can't. Some things I do remember, like with the fella they called the idiot and everything, but the ferry crossing, that's a whole blank for me.
Yeah,
I completely agree with Stephen there, because that's exactly the same for me.
Yeah,
I found from the ferry crossing onwards is probably like my favourite bit of the book, actually. I thought it was like when things really kicked it up a notch, and where at least where I thought, I mean, probably the next section more so, but I think it's where like the horror, the sort of fear started to sort of happen. But I think I'll touch on that more in the sort of last section. But yeah, it was just filled with more religious imagery again, which I sort of glossed over or didn't even mention at all. But there's one stage where Toadvine meets these Sonoran Indians who I believe are peaceful, but they're burning like a Judas effigy, which I think sort of foreshadows again this sort of, well, foreshadows that a lot of these people's bodies are getting burned, but also the fact that it's a Judas effigy sort of foreshadows that there's going to be just a lot of betrayal. One of the things being about how the judge seemed to know that there was sort of seemed to get away quite easily from this attack. You know, he seemed to again just know this was happening. Did he betray them, or again is there other reasons why he knew this was going to happen? I suppose we'll never know, but Grant, so this is the sort of last 4 chapters of the book. So this for me was my favourite bit of the book. So after the sort of massacre at the ferry crossing, where lots of the Glunton gang are killed, or most of the Glunton gang are killed, the kid and Toadvine and the ex-priest Tobin are fleeing these Yuma Indians. The kid, because he actually is quite a good marksman, he actually ends up killing quite a lot of them, and they sort of seem to leave him alone. But somehow out of nowhere, the judge seems to find him. I think the judge then offers Toadvine like ridiculous money for his hat. He's offering Toadvine $150 for his hat, and then he offers the kid $500 for his gun. But before the kid gives him over his gun, Tobin the priest is actually saying, look, you have to kill the judge. This is your last chance to kill the judge and get rid of him. But the kid doesn't do that, and he doesn't give him his gun. And for this, the judge then seems to sort of hunt him down. Tobin gets shot. And at this stage, then the judge is actually with the idiot, and they're both sort of hunting after the kid. And then at one stage, the judge actually goes past him and he has the idiot on a leash, almost like a dog. But thankfully the kid, I believe it's Tobin, the kid and Tobin get rescued by some more Native Americans, and they make it to San Diego. However, wants to get here very quickly, the kid gets arrested, and the judge shows up again and sort of tells him that he himself has told the police that the kid was responsible for the whole massacre at the ferry. However, the kid manages to get released from prison after he tells the police about where they find the gang's treasure. Later on, after his passage, the kid then goes to watch a hanging, and it turns out it's actually Toadvine and Brown who he's watching get hanged. And then there's like a big time jump, and the kid goes from like sort of 15, 16, and now all of a sudden he's sort of 28. And I'm not entirely sure if he's still 28 in this last chapter, maybe slightly older, but now the book's now referring to him as the man.
I think it was like 10 years after or something.
Yeah,
I remember.
yeah. I can't remember when the book starts, which is the problem. But it does sort of state that he's 28, so I think it might be the sort of same time. But now the man in the final chapter. So the man actually meets this 15-year-old kid called Elrod. Not Elrond, fortunately. But and there's sort of, it's like a bit of likeness towards what the kid was like at that age. And this Elrod is quite feisty, quite aggressive. He's sort of threatening the man. And he actually then comes to try and kill the man, but the man kills him. And then afterwards, the man enters a saloon, and there at the saloon, there's like a young girl, and there's actually a bear, and I think it's like a tutu or something like that, and the bear's dancing while the girl's playing the piano or something like that.
The fiddle, is it?
A fiddle. I think the fiddle's maybe after, soon enough. But then the judge also shows up, and the judge makes this speech about the dance, which I'm not going to try and quote now off the top of my head, but he likens the dance to, or war, he likens war to a dance. And then quite spookily, the man goes to an outhouse, goes to the toilet, and as he opens the door, the judge is sitting on the toilet and sort of like pops up and grabs him and sort of draws him into his flesh. And then it's just sort of skips to like these 3 gentlemen, and one guy's like, don't go in there, don't look, and it's the man's sort of mangled corpse in this outhouse toilet. And then the book sort of finishes sort of like it started, with the judge sort of pleasing the crowd like he did at the very start after the sermon. You know, he was in a pub and he was having a bit of crack, and he was like the sort of number one guy in this bar, and he's dancing and he's playing the fiddle, I think, at that stage. And that's just sort of how it ends. So that was the sort of last 4 chapters of the book.
I was back in again for the last couple of chapters. It was somehow I picked up on that the gang had been massacred, and I thought I was realising I was coming towards the end of the book, and I was like, damn, I've missed a big chunk here. So tune back in. And I quite enjoyed the last few chapters. I like the whole thing where the judge turns on him, and the foreshadowing for that. Not turns on him, but like he touts on him, and everything that's going on there. And I really like the last chapter where he goes to the bar and everything, and the judge kind of kills him, and it's kind of like the kid sort of like he got like justice was done because the kid met his end in a way. Because he sort of all the bad things he did eventually came back to him in the form of the judge killing him. And I liked how the judge sort of follows him around throughout his life. I realised that towards the end that the judge is kind of always there when throughout this journey that he's gone on, and watching him kind of go from a sort of innocent guy, and there I'm bringing it up again, to this sort of like wandering murderer effectively, bad person, and then he finally gets him at the end.
Yeah, and I think by the end of it, it's good. It's good. I think by the end of the day, once the judge has sort of killed off the man, he is now the sort of sole survivor of the Glinton gang. Unless the Eddie's still alive, I'm not entirely sure actually. But Michael, any thoughts on these last couple of chapters?
Yeah, I thought it was a really powerful ending. I thought it was a great ending to the book. The implication that I got from it anyway was not only that he killed the man, but also raped him before killing him. And again, I think it was, as you alluded to earlier, Jason, that kind of assertion of dominance is probably the primary motive of this, and maybe part of what Stephen was saying too, where it was the kid goes through this book and this kind of guise of innocence, but is he really innocent because he's committed all these atrocities just because he kind of every now and then he has minor objections, he's still engaged in these horrific things, so he's sort of a hypocrite in this book as well. But I think you could endlessly debate why the judge kills him. I think it's completely open for interpretation. I think the imagery of him dancing afterwards and playing the fiddle is very haunting, and it's probably going to stay with me for a long time. So I think that shows the effectiveness of it.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's ever even like if he's ever like Googled like sort of drawings of the judge, but they're quite terrifying.
They are terrifying, yeah.
Yeah.
Like something like 4chan made of, Honestly,
You know what I like?
terrifying.
You know what I like as well, and this just sort of came to me. The kid's journey is sort of like a reverse, or not like an inverse of the hero's journey. It's more like the villain's journey, right? Where,
Yeah.
Nothing more to say other than that. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah. It's like a slow corruption kind of.
Yeah, slow corruption towards a sort of redemption at the end, but then he gets killed anyway.
Yeah, I suppose there was a bit of a redemption, because I think, again, something I never really talked about, but I think there is like a stage where he actually ends up getting like baptized, and it sort of mentions that he's carrying about a Bible with him as well at that stage.
Yeah.
He seems to have sort of chose God rather than the judge, Hint, hint.
What I find very interesting too in their conversation, it's you would think the judge, who is like this warmonger, and the kid who's clearly found religion, that the kid would be the guy who believes in purpose, and the judge the one who is a nihilist, but it's the other way around. The judge believes that they were intended to meet, and that it was fate that drew them together, where the kid kind of just believes that things happen, and that's it. They just happen.
Yeah.
So
I find that interesting too.
Yeah, it was. That was my favorite part, definitely. Quite a lot happened there. I actually found the whole sort of chase scene with the judge just like constantly on his tail. I actually found it like sort of almost like a horror. Because he is just sort of like this ever present. You can't shake him.
He's just kind of there at all times. Yeah, like some sort of dark force. He follows him around.
Yeah, and like
again, I haven't read the book, but it reminded me so much of No Country for Old Men, the movie.
Yeah, I haven't read the book either, but as you sort of mentioned, it's actually another Cormac McCarthy novel.
Yeah.
So potentially I'll get that read at some stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, that seems to be the sort of spoiler.
Just one thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask if he's had any thoughts about how the judge killed him and like why it was done like that, like in an outhouse and a bear hug, and then it cuts and he's dead.
It's sort of interesting that that's the sort of violent part that it skips.
Yeah. And just even the setting, like, because he could have done it anyway. The guy could have just shot him or just beat him to death or something. But no, well, we don't know what happened. But it went into meticulous detail that the kid was going to the toilet.
I think I'm not sure
And the
why
judge is just
about
there.
the toilet. Maybe it's because the toilet is where we're most
Vulnerable,
bare and
yeah.
primal, and it's like, and the judge he wrestled him, like as you said, he didn't shoot him. He like basically wrestled him, which is the most masculine way to kill somebody probably. So it's again, I think it does point to that kind of a certain dominant kind of that desire of the judge.
Yeah, again, he's wrestled him, he's dominated him. I think you're right, actually. Well, at least that's what we can assume. I think it does say the word wrestle, but we don't know what happened. But was the man also found naked? I think, is that why you sort of touched upon? Was he also raped? Or
I think it's kind of ambiguous how he's found.
Yeah,
but we just know based on like all the things that's happened in the past with the kids going missing that the judge always dances after the deed and that he's naked and stuff. So I think that's what my interpretation was anyway, that he was raped before that.
Yeah, no, I did see some things talking about that, definitely. Yeah, Grant. So that is the spoiler review section over. I suppose one thing we actually never talked about, actually, I'm a liar. One thing that we've always touched on, but we haven't touched on here at all, was the narrator themselves. Has anyone anything they want to say about the narration? You hated it?
Yeah, it's that style again. Like it's that monotone delivery style that seems to be popular with older sort of books, and I'm not sure why. It was the same problem that I had with the narrator in what was that called? The second book we did, Inferno. It was the same kind of style where it's like monotone delivery and everything, and I don't know. For me it made it even harder to kind of connect with any of the horrible characters in the book, because there was no emotion for me behind any of the voices. I don't know. That's I didn't like it.
Oh, it's fair. It's fair. Michael, how did you feel?
I have no strong feelings about the narration, to be honest. I don't think the narrator for me contributed it to it being hard to follow. I think that was all McCarthy's prose. I think the narrator did a fine job, but nothing stellar. I thought it was just kind of middle of the road.
Yeah, and John, I can imagine what you're going to say, but
I loved it.
I mean, the narrator just added to the overall boringness of this book for me. So there's nothing really exciting about it. And don't know if that's his fault or it's the writing style again, But yeah.
Yeah, John, I think you're the same as me. It's that style.
Okay, it just doesn't get the intrigue.
Yeah.
It's just kind of.
I find it interesting to imagine if somebody like Stephen Fry had narrated it though. just to like picture that.
Be awful.
Oh yeah, of course, because I forgot about that.
No, I liked him in Harry Potter, just not the last book. Book that shall not be named. Right. Well,
what did you think about the narrator?
Oh yeah, I forgot to sort of. I would agree. It's quite monotone. It's quite flat. But I think there's no emotion in the book, so the narrator themselves can't seem they can't, like, what's the word, like it's not inflect, is that the word I'm looking for? Like, they can't really do anything with their voice to sort of make it more exciting, because they're not being given anything from the actual writing themselves.
I suppose that's true, yeah, but still a killer for me, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, the it is an audio book review. It's not a book review, and the big part of it is the narration and how the book sounds.
I do think that if I got a physical copy, I would enjoy it more than the audio version. Like, I think for one, I would have been able to tune in at all times, which definitely would have done something. But then, I think a physical copy would have been better for me, and I might pick it one up, to be honest.
There is a
even
copy.
the discussions that we've been having here have made me more interested in than I ever was with the audio version.
Yeah, there's lots.
Yeah,
there's lots.
I actually find researching this book extremely fascinating. I just love seeing the different. I love reading people who love the book. I love reading people who hate the book. I really liked hearing both sides.
And I would sort of mirror that point as well. And that actually, while preparing to host this episode and while I was sort of reviewing the chapters, and I'd also listened to it all while it was sort of putting it back in place, and I could see the names, I could follow the sort of what was happening. It was bringing it more alive to me. I did really enjoy, actually, well, as much as you can enjoy preparing for this. Actually enjoyed it to an extent. So yeah, we'll go to the star rating now. So I'm going to go with who I think is going to give it the lowest. Jonathan Kane.
5.
Yeah, like I said, I found this, apart from the very first few chapters when I think I was tuned in, and because I think the repetitiveness is what kind of got me in the end. So like whenever I heard it for the first time at the first few chapters, it was all good, and then just lost me. And I think Stephen mentioned the part there about how he didn't focus for a part and he tried. I was at the stage where I wasn't even going to try anymore. I was just playing it until it was done. Like, so yeah, it has to be a 1 from me. And the narrator performance wasn't great either. So
you really gave up on this book, didn't you?
I like Stephen said, I think if I had the hard copy, I would probably enjoy it more, and we'll probably talk about this in the next section. But I think they did say there's going to be a movie or something, and I think I'd really be interested to watch the movie, because how are they going to do all this goriness on TV, like, so that would be interesting. But yeah, I just think as an audiobook I didn't enjoy it.
Imagine that you hated the audiobook but you loved the movie.
Yeah, but I think the reason he hates the audiobook is just the format of the audiobook more than anything.
No, I know. I just think
it's the story. The story is probably good. It's just the actual delivery and the writing style and things like that.
I think that's fair enough, Johnny. So I'll go to Stephen next.
Yeah, I mean, same here, really. I came into this episode expecting to give this a 1, right? But I did, like I've mentioned a few times through our discussions, I've come to appreciate it a bit more, and that sort of improves my overall entertainment with the whole thing. So I'm going to give it a 1.5. Just bumping up a wee bit. I can't justify it too. I don't think, because I really didn't enjoy the book, unfortunately. There was something, like, I did like that it was super gruesome and that he didn't let up on that, but it was too much. And the fact that, like, there's like so many characters we come across, but you can't connect with any of them, and there was no plot hook to hook me in or anything. It was just, there's nothing for me to connect with at all, and I feel like I need that for a book to be enjoyable.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
A fiction book, anyway. If it was like somebody's audiobook or something, that's a different story.
So I'll go to Michael next.
So I have very mixed feelings on the book. I did find Cormac McCarthy's style hard to follow at times. Lots of run-on sentences. Lots of we didn't read the written version, but apparently the written version has no very little punctuation. There's no speech marks or anything like that.
I can imagine.
So I remember I've heard Stephen King before talk about like the difference between literary and genre fiction, and I think he said something like genre fiction is ordinary people and extraordinary situations, and literary fiction is extraordinary people in ordinary situations. But the way I've always differentiated is, like, literary fiction is the main character is not actually the main character. The main character is either the prose or the themes. So I think that I think if you put it under that guise, where the theme is the central point of this book, I found it really fascinating. And I find the character of the judge, I've read two people saying that he's like one of the best villains or antagonists or one of the best literary characters. And I'll definitely remember the judge for a long time, and it'll be in my head haunting me. So as I said before as well, I can't really rate this on enjoyment, because you don't enjoy a book like this. It's about emotional impact, I think, that you rate this on. And what detracted from emotional impact for me was that a lot of the things that happened, a lot of the horrific things, were like these faceless characters that I just could not connect with. And I didn't connect with the gang a lot. But I did feel this kind of, I think, this exhaustion and this nihilism that McCarthy was trying to get across. And I felt very... I feel fascinated by that, and I just want to read more about this book, and I do want to revisit it as well. And I've seen it's like a common reaction to reading this book, that a lot of people who love this book did not like it the first time they read it. But I think I'm going to go middle of the road and give it 3 stars here.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair as well. And I will just very quickly sort of mirror that. If anything, I was probably going to come in and give it like a 3, because I did struggle a bit with this as an audiobook. Definitely while I was sort of doing my sort of research and getting ready and analysing it a bit more, it did make me think of it in a different way. So unfortunately for the audiobook, I would have wanted to give it higher. I really thought I'd be coming into this and giving this like a high 4.5 or a 5, just based on the road, apologies. But I think I'm going to have to come in at a 3.5 overall for Blood Meridian, or The Evening Redness in the West.
That gives us, just for note, that gives us a 2.25 average.
And is that,
how does that rank?
Is that the lowest yet, or?
Yeah, it's close though.
Yes.
With Thursday Murder Club.
I forgot you all hated Thursday Murder Club.
Yeah, it's close.
Our listeners are going to be so angry at us.
You know what I really did
Actually,
like that I forgot to mention is the chapter summaries. Not summaries, but like the little insert before every chapter. I really like that. I wish more books did that.
I will do that. We insert as our intro instead of doing a selection from the episode.
Forgot about that actually. So thank you, Michael.
I'll record something.
Happy days.
I really liked it. I kind of wish more books would do that.
I think it was quite common actually in like old Western books. I think that's why he sort of did it. There was a name for it. I can't remember what it is.
It was kind of how I was intrigued by the first chapters, because I remember just thinking, what the hell is going on here? And then one of the ones is like, the one where the dead babies, it's like dead babies on a tree or something. I was like, yeah. So that was what kind of intrigued me. But then after that, I think it just lost its kind of impact on me. But because it was something different that I'd never heard, that was what kind of kept me going at the start. I
just picture you driving and listening to that chapter summary. You're definitely just emergency stop and be like, what?
Okay, so we'll jump on to comparisons to other media. Has anybody anything they want to chime in with, or?
Well, I guess westerns. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I've seen. I'm not a huge western guy.
No, I feel like this book itself was a very different take. Like the best comparison I think is obviously the other Cormac McCarthy, the factual film that I've seen is No Country for Old Men. I just think it's just very grim. It's got the same kind of grimness to it, and the whole thing is basically about a boy just going around murdering people. So you know what I mean. He just loves killing. Cormac McCarthy. It just gets him going. Like.
And a lot of people say about how I can't remember what his character is now in the No Country for Old Men, but the guy with the bowl cut. Like a lot of what people say about him. Yeah, about how like good of a villain he is as well. Sort of similar to the judge. I suppose that he seems to be quite good at writing.
It's like they have no motive.
Yeah.
They like it's the Joker kind of villain where they just have no motive. They just cause chaos for chaos. Like,
Actually, I watched the scene where he goes onto the station, isn't it, with the
shop, the flip a coin.
Flips a coin, yeah.
yeah, that's one. Yeah, such a good scene. So like
argues
the
with
guy
him about
who-
flipping it.
Yeah, it's so good.
Call it.
Both of their performances in that scene just top notch.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it. Actually, I didn't even realize it was Cormac McCarthy when I watched it. It's that long ago.
And we've
great-
both
great
read The
movie.
Roads, Jason, and we both really like that book, didn't we?
Really liked The Road.
Yeah.
Like, definitely compared to this, I'm like, I was sort of not disappointed, but I was expecting to enjoy this audiobook more compared to The Road.
Yeah, I think like I think I said that to Jonathan when we were listening. I said to him, I like The Road because there's an emotional core to kind of to go against all this horrific stuff, and
Yeah,
it was too relentless without that
yeah, but I suppose
in this book.
that's what I was trying to show is that that was just what happened. You know, everybody was just evil.
Yeah,
I suppose other comparisons you could probably make. Someone's going to say it, but like Red Dead Redemption, something like that. Just
I think
purely for the Western setting.
I said to. I think I pointed out to Game of Thrones. It reminded me of, especially the sections in Clash of Kings and Storm of Swords, where kind of we're taken through like Arya's point of view, and to the the between cities
Yes, the
where
boring
people are
chapters.
just people are just kind of relentlessly murdering everybody, and there's no rhyme or reason. It kind of reminded me of those chapters.
So let's head on to trivia then. As I think we sort of touched on a bit of trivia already. I think was it Johnny, I think you had mentioned about a movie. Do you want to talk about that anymore, or?
No, I mean, them boys probably have better because that was them told me. It was Stephen, I think, mentioned at the start.
That wasn't Stephen, apologies.
What? Mentioned what? Sorry.
About the movie, but I don't know if you know much about it, but no, Jason was just asking.
No, I think it was Michael.
Did I-
Oh, right, well, someone mentioned it.
That I? Oh well.
Somebody get some trouble quick.
There's this book has been. There's been numerous times when this book has been picked up to being made into a movie adaptation. But if you have read this book or listened to it with us, you'll know that why that is extremely hard. It's not what you would see in a movie very typically. But apparently it has been. They are looking to adapt it now. Even this year, it's been talked about. So
Yeah, it's quite recently, I think, when I read about it.
April 2023, wasn't it? I mean, it would be interesting to see if that comes to fruition. I would definitely check it out if it does ever come out.
And was it a TV show or a movie? That's a movie, yeah. You're right.
I'm nearly sure it was a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. I mean, there's been other examples of things that they said were unadaptable that were made into things. Game of Thrones again as an example of that. George R. R. Martin always said Game of Thrones was unadaptable.
I think that's more to do with scale, though. And then I think
So
another thing to point out about the movie thing is that like studios probably don't want to make it because it doesn't really follow the 3-act sort of structure that's typical for movies, right?
It definitely does not.
So,
it does
yeah,
not follow the.
It's go-
It definitely does not follow the free extra.
so
at all.
it's gonna be a
Just
big
looking-
miss for for a lot of folks.
It's the boy that they're planning to direct it. He actually did The Road.
Yeah, I was going to say that, yeah.
Right,
I didn't realise it was Viggo Mortensen was the main actor in it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm definitely watching it.
Apparently it's
I've
very
actually never
impressive.
seen the movie.
No, you're by. Meant to after read the book.
Never
but-
seen Viggo Mortensen in anything else, so Lord of the Rings. So I need to
Does he break his toe in this film?
I don't know. But yeah, any other trivia from anyone else?
I don't know if it's really trivia, but every time I look at his Wikipedia, Cormac McCarthy's Wikipedia page, all I see is Lalo from Better Call Saul looking back at me. Go look at his
While we're
picture.
on the topic of
Go look at
best
it right
ever
now.
villains.
Go look at
Aye.
it right now. And tell me he doesn't look like Lalo.
Lalo.
Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah.
No,
And
it
just
doesn't
his
look like
Wikipedia picture.
Oh my god, it does, you're right. The mustache.
Hello, Hector. He had a mustache
Does.
and the hair
Does, aye.
and the shirt that he's wearing.
Oh, Jesus.
Aye, speaking
That's
of
what it looks like him. It looks it's everything.
speaking of amazing films, you're right, Michael. Yeah, one of my
Yeah.
favourite.
Oh my god, so good.
Aye, but we'll save that for the Better Call Saul Breaking Bad podcast. We do. Anyone else consuming anything good at the moment?
Baldur's Gate 3, and that's it. Nothing else.
You've
That's just
talked about
consumed
that.
my life for weeks now.
And
It's
how
great.
many
It's a great
many
game.
hours have you put in?
It's hard to say, let me see, because I've save scummed a few times, good few times, so
You can check your Steam.
Yeah.
Is it on
Steam playtime,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what I'm
I check your playtime.
I think it's about 60 hours or something.
It's
And
impressive.
I'm like not even halfway. It's
about
great.
Damn.
2 weeks old, isn't it?
Well,
But
that's
see,
basically
that's-
all your
that's the
more or
other
less
thing.
your all waking hours.
That's the other thing though, because I played it when it was in like they were released in early access and they would like
Oh, yeah.
release some patches. I played it at least at the first patch anyway for a good bit. So yeah, 43 hours in the last 2 weeks.
Oh my god.
Now I will
cool,
never
isn't it?
play it because it's cool and I only like to get to things first and then brag about it.
You know, Michael, you bought Elden Ring out of the gate, like, so
Yeah.
And that was cool, and we like to brag about
it
it.
was cool and everybody liked it.
Never finished that
What you
game.
do there, Michael, is you get it years later when everyone's no one's no longer talking about it, and then you bring it back into its coolness.
Yeah.
Nah,
we do a
That's what
podcast
I do.
about
But
it.
like it's just incredible.
Michael retro games.
Ringcast.
retro games. Like, it's just incredible. There's so
Ringcast.
much like variety that happens through it, you know, as you play it. And like I said, I've save scummed a few times, which for the uninitiated means that you've
I know
reloaded
it is.
when something bad has happened, which is kind of goes against the idea of the game, where you're supposed to just live with it, right? But you know. So a few times I've like reloaded and things have gone completely different to the way they've happened the first time, and it's just crazy.
Just a roll of dice,
FIFA
then,
player,
today.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Aye, right, Michael. Manager mode. Anytime you lose a Champions League final.
Restart.
You
Um,
save scummer.
Yeah, I've been reading
Oh,
a lot
and-
about Saves Coming recently.
And Lightbringer as well, the new book in the Red Rising series, that was taking up my time for a good chunk of this. That's why it took me so long to finish this book.
Yeah.
Because that was released just as we were starting to, we had just started listening to it, Blood Meridian. So, I mean, it was fantastic again from Pierce Brown. Definitely recommend all the Red Rising books.
Yeah, they're fantastic books, and I suppose I'll just jump in here. I'm currently about halfway through Lightbringer, and yeah, really enjoying it. And apart from that,
Then
I've
put
sort
it
of
as your
hit-
recommendation, new cards.
they're quite
I
long.
told you before, Michael. I don't want to because I only want to recommend books that I've not done before.
Yeah, I'm the same boat. I don't really want to reread things.
Except
I mix it
Hitchhiker's
that I
Right.
do.
You-
One week is something that I haven't read that I want to read, and then the next time it's something that I have read that I want you guys to read.
Mine's are all rereads, and I just want you to validate my great taste.
Ah, fair. See,
That's
that's
Michael, because you've read almost everything. Like there's not much extra for you to read.
well. Look, he hadn't.
But he
hadn't
won't read
read
Wikipedia.
Blood Meridian.
That's the thing.
Yep, there's
True.
been a few. There's been a few you guys have done that I haven't had before.
For Stevens, more or less all Stevens, apart from Thursday Murder Club, have been ones that I didn't even hear about.
That's
That's what
good.
I'm saying. I like to go obscure.
I don't think I've read any of Stevens before we did this.
Thursday Murder Club, didn't Stephen do it?
I
Oh,
like
you
it.
haven't read that, have you not?
No, that was the first time.
That was me.
Okay. Oh, was that you?
Aye.
Oh, how was it you? You didn't. Oh no, you had read it. Sorry, I thought you meant you were the one who recommended it.
No, I'd read the trilogy. Sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Get you.
I finally picked up. Is it Star Wars Fallen Order? The their most recent Star Wars game anyways. I'd sort of stopped playing that once Zelda came out, but I've picked it back up again, and it's class.
Have they patched it? Because I know there was a lot of issues with that when it came out.
Issues on PC, I think. PS5, God console, it was all fine. And just been playing a bit of Apex and getting absolutely smoked online. It's a good crack.
By 10-year-olds.
And they're all ruining me. Yeah, my thumbs are gone. Kind of should.
Thumbs are gone. Don't have the thumbs for it anymore.
No, I've wrecked them doing physio.
For the controllers.
I just can't do FPSs anymore. Or Battle Royales. Terrible at it.
So you were just talking about Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. So I mentioned this before. I've been going through IMDb's top 250 TV shows, and currently top of that list is Breaking Bad. So I have started rewatching Breaking Bad.
I'm loving it.
Oh, absolutely awesome again. I mean, I think I've only watched the last season once, like when it first came out. I've seen the other seasons a couple of times because like rewatching for the new seasons and stuff, but I think I've only seen the last season once, so I'm looking forward to getting there. But I think you just appreciate Breaking Bad more in the first few seasons, like than you do the first time you watch it.
Definitely.
Just because you just know about the setup and like you appreciate the change with all more.
I do agree with the popular sentiment where it gets better as it goes, but those first seasons are underrated.
Yeah, although I would say the first season is a bit of a slow burner, especially on rewatch.
I think the first season's so good. Still, I would.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just saying it's a bit slow.
Yeah, but I would say
I like how it's like,
yeah,
like how he changes so quickly. Like I think the episode I just watched there most recently was the one where the boy is driving the like nice sports car and he's a pure dickhead and he's like on the phone and all and doesn't give a shit about anyone else, and then Walter blows up his car.
No way.
I just think like it's just kind of like gone from, because he's dying, like he's just gone from being this pure, I don't know what the way, basically a nobody, like they being now I just don't give a fuck, I'm gonna mess shit up like.
Yeah, what was the Vince Gilligan's pitch for it? Was like Ned Flanders becomes Tony Montana or something like that.
Yeah, it's not a bad
it's a good pitch
comparison. I guess I'll call it like he's I think like he's obviously jealous of the people that are rich now as friends that he could have been part of, and I think all that anger is just like getting released all at one go, just because he can now. Like, what else am I doing? So I mentioned before I was doing a bit of gardening. So I've been growing a few plants, and I just been harvesting my first tomatoes and just made a tomato soup today, and it was the best tomato soup I've ever had in my life.
Nice.
I don't know if that's because it's it's about 3 months I've been growing it. That's just all the hard work, like, or is it just because the tomatoes are just literally right off the bush, like, so they're as fresh as they can be.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. Hopefully next year get on the more growing different mad things, like so. But obviously it's coming on the winter now, so.
I was gonna say, you're not moving house as well.
I'm also moving house, trying to move house, but we're having a bit of difficulty actually finding a new house.
Yeah.
So.
Grim enough.
Yeah, that continues.
Something Glasgow.
I think.
Just grow a big tomato. Loving it.
Just one big
Grow
tomato.
a tree and then build a tree house on it, but that might probably take longer.
The satisfaction, but
this is true.
Think of how juicy that tree house would be.
God. Yeah, I think I've been doing. I've just started a new job last month. I'm kind of just doing a lot of stuff for it because I'm not actually on the project. Like, it's all the background stuff has to go through, and also just kind of been doing my own stuff. So just kind of doing a lot of work on my YouTube videos and things like that. But yeah, it's about it. Like,
How it is. Michael, I'm assuming you've been up to loads as usual.
I actually haven't really watched anything, to be honest, but been listening to a few audiobooks. I've listened to Strange Weather by Joe Hill. That's Stephen King's son. It's just a collection of novellas. It's pretty good. Been working on my podcast, The Dark Tales. I released a mini episode there last night called Dinner Date. Working on a few more minisodes. The next one should come out in a couple of weeks. Called I don't know if I can call it this because I need to look more into copyright. I was going to call it Fireman Sam, but I might need to call it Smiler. Also, I'll check the copyright because if I ever monetize, I don't know if I'm allowed to call it Fireman Sam.
Called Fireman Samuel.
And the third episode, the third minisode then, which will come out a couple of weeks after that, is called Fall in Love or Die. And then I'm going to work on a few more miniature episodes after that.
Fall in Love or Die sounds like a James Bond movie.
It does, you're right.
Can I ask what's the dinner one based on? You say you always base it on something in your life.
The Dinner Date is completely fictional. That's based on nothing. I'm sort of poking fun at myself a bit. There's a character. It's a Tinder date, and the character is sort of based on like bro culture, but I'm also making fun of myself at parts in it as well. It's it's kind of, but I wouldn't really say it's based on anything.
Just before I forget, because I always forget about audiobooks that I'm listening to. I just while we were waiting to like record this episode, I was kind of in a weird spot where I didn't have anything to listen to, so I picked up a completely random Jeanette McCurdy's audiobook. If you know who she is, she was.
I love
the
that
kill the mum one.
iCarly.
Yeah, I'm glad my mum died. It's called.
Yeah,
it's so sad the things that happened to her, but it's actually a really good listen.
it's a great audiobook.
It's actually really good. Yeah, I was surprised. I was completely out of nowhere. I think I saw an article about something in the book, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting." So then picked it up and loved it.
And her reading of it is so good as well. It's great.
It's so grim though.
I used to watch a bit of iCarly myself back in the day, So as a cool kid.
Actually, I've actually been thinking about recommending that one because it would be so out there for us to do, but
Yeah, it's definitely worth a listen. I was pleasantly surprised with how good it was.
Heard good things.
And then
I think we missed the boat on it. If we had have done it last year, if we had have done it when we started the podcast, that was the height of its buzz.
We have to wait now a few months or a few years, and then it becomes a classic, and then we can do it.
Yeah.
I think she's like got a free book deal or something with whoever the publisher was. So I think I'm keen to see the next one that she puts out and what's that's going to be about. But then the other one that I got was it was a recommendation from Michael. Actually, it was "Will Save the Galaxy for Food," which he recommended a few times to me on this podcast, I think. And I really enjoyed that as well. It's kind of in that sort of Hitchhiker's sphere where it sort of pokes fun at science fiction, but it manages to be really good science fiction at the same time.
Jason would love it.
And I Jason would love it.
Quietly booed as Stephen was speaking there, but
yeah. I it's not one that I would recommend here because I know Jason would hate it, and I don't want to put him through that.
not anytime soon, anyways.
No.
So that's been what we've been consuming. I mean, I think Michael's already sort of plugged a bit, but has anyone else got anything they want to plug, or
just the usual YouTube channel about the programming videos? Still working away on it. So
I've got nothing.
I just wanted to plug our general. We haven't done it in ages, but just so people know that we do have our email. We all have access to it. We will look at it if anybody ever wants to send us on anything, and we will. I can see our listener numbers are starting to slowly uptick, so hopefully we do get something in there. But I cannot say that we've been looking at the Twitter because I don't know what is going on with X or Twitter or
you
whatever.
You can't call it Twitter anymore.
I'm sorry. I'll cut that out.
Can't believe you dead name X. Goddamn.
And I have actually looked. I was looking today at some of the requests, and there are a few in there that have interested me. There's one in particular that's really interested me.
Yeah, I always say to Jonathan and Stephen, if anybody says, "Oh, you should do this book," just take that as an official request. So if anybody ever says that to you, Jason, make sure to add it.
Add it
because
in.
I mention, yeah, anytime you mention, oh, I do this podcast, people probably will recommend the book that you should do.
Yeah, well, the top one in the request is something I've always wanted to listen to. So.
Oh, that's the one I don't want to do ever.
That's only because I've heard things too, but I've listened to the others, and in fact one of them is one of my favourite books.
It's the second one, is it?
Andy Serkis did a
it's the prequel
recently.
Exactly, that's why I'm interested in it.
I would prefer if we did all other 4 books first before doing that though.
Well, we've sort of given it away a bit, but yes. I'd be interested. So I think that might be me in terms of hosting this episode. Thank you. It's been Blood Meridian. I'm going to pass it over now to whoever is giving our next pick.
You
Michael.
You did great, by the way. Just throwing that out.
Yeah, good job, Jason.
Good job.
Thank you.
It's tough hosting. So I am going to do the opposite of what Stephen does, where he said that he usually goes for an obscure book. This book is extremely well known.
It's okay, Michael, because your recommendations are always good, so come at me.
It is very prominent in pop culture. It is one of the most popular books ever by a bestseller list. It's one of the most popular movies ever. It is a horror book. It is a horror book.
Is it The Shining?
It is The Shining. And I have said numerous times that I'm a huge fan of Stephen King, and I've yet to recommend a Stephen King book, so I said I have to recommend at least one before we had our year. So the book that I think is a good entry to Stephen King, I think, is The Shining. So this book, there's a Simpsons episode about it. There's a lot of I think Ready Player One has scenes that allude to this. So you probably, even if you have not read this or seen the movies, you probably know something about this book. So I don't know if we can do the guesses.
Here's Johnny.
But I'll go round you anyway. Do you guys know anything about The Shining, either the book or the movie?
Well, I've not read or seen either, so... But yeah, I have a rough idea.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've not read or seen either, but I'm pretty sure I know the plot. Like, somehow, like the complete plot. Maybe not
my guess?
And their details and stuff, but yeah, I could probably give you a good overview of the whole thing.
What about you, Jonathan? Do you know anything?
My guess is that it's about this guy called Johnny, and he like runs about and he announces that he's here. I know about it's a set in a hotel, some weird hotel, or is that just part? Am I wrong?
No, you're right.
Confirm it.
You're spot on. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I won't say any more because I do know bits and pieces. I don't know how it ends or anything, but I know bits and pieces.
Do you want to play the guessing game and see who gets the closest to what it's about? Because
play the guess game purely because I have not yet got to play it.
I suppose. Okay, yeah.
Need to get the name on the board.
Who do you think knows the most? Then I don't. Is it fair? Is it
the most
fair to go with the person?
I know the least. I'd say.
I was talking
so Jonathan, you'll go last then.
So
okay,
I think
Stephen, you go first then. Hello everyone, this is Michael from the future editing this episode. At this point in the episode, Stephen basically guesses the entire plot of The Shining, word for word. So I thought it was best to remove this part just in case any of the listeners have not seen or read The Shining yet. So if you're wondering what Stephen guessed, it was just the exact plot.
That was quite a good guess.
And then, and as Johnny said, the main guy kind of runs around and he announces, "Look, I am here. It's me, John."
Friendly axe salesman.
Yeah.
Look how effective these axes are.
I think that's
I'd like to go next.
Well, I think Stephen's done a pretty good job. I wasn't aware as to why it was called The Shining, or why about this child having superpowers. I was aware that there's a sequel with the sequel of the book. The movie has Ewan McGregor called Doctor Sleep. I think potentially maybe he wants the children from The Shining.
The movie is so underrated.
But all I really knew was that it was like a family traveled to this hotel. I think it was maybe the writer dad, so he could get like some isolation to do his book or something like that. And then this hotel is like haunted, and he slowly goes mad, or else he gets possessed potentially. And And yeah,
See if that's the kicker.
They mirror Stephen, like these, the children like seeing these like twins on like tricycles, and there's like halls of blood and whatnot. I think there's a maze at some stage. But yeah, that's me, Johnny.
Like I've said before, there's a guy who runs about announcing himself as Johnny. That's pretty much it. Like he just runs about with an axe and just fucking smashes on doors, and
This is
the whole book.
This is a 15-hour audiobook, so he does that for 15 hours.
Like it's set in a hotel where there are a lot of doors, so he goes round all the doors and he smashes them all and tells them that he's here, and then it's pretty much how it ends.
One connection of this book to another book that we've done, which isn't actually a connection of the book, but connection of the movies. Stanley Kubrick also directed 2001: A Space Odyssey, and he directed The Shining. So we've never done like movies as recommended viewing, but I would definitely recommend checking out the movie if you guys do have time as well, because I think that they're both considered masterpieces, but there's differences and there's arguments about the differences, so I think that would be interesting to get into, but if you don't, I'll definitely touch on it anyway.
Yeah, no, it's
and of course, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Isn't that the thing?
I cannot neither confirm nor deny.
Well, yeah, is that us?
Yeah, that's us. So
who narrates that, Michael?
Yeah, next episode we will be doing The Shining, written by Stephen King, and that's narrated by Campbell Scott.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.
Laters.